and welcome to Season 2 of the NGO Whisperer Show. My name is Carolyne Opinde. I am the founder of the NGO Whisperer. We are a consulting business that helps nonprofits raise funds so they can successfully impact people's lives. Joining us today from Salt Lake City, Utah, in the United States is Nancy Meyer. Nancy is the founder of Power Play Profit Solution, a consulting business that works with both for-profit and non-profit companies around the world. She's also the author of Advisory Board Playbook. She's a contributor to the NGO Whisperer magazine and a master trainer of our masterclasses held at the NGO Whisperer. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here. I just love the work that you're doing, and anything I can do to support the whole not-for-profit world is my honor, and it's doing such a great job. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We are honored to have you today. And as the author of the Advisory Board Playbook, your experience in working with board members within the nonprofit sector, as well as for-profit companies, is admirable. And today, our topic is how can nonprofits engage and work with their board members effectively during emergency situations such as now during COVID-19 pandemic. So to start us off, Nancy, I'm going to ask you a question that we have discussed many a times as we work with nonprofit board members and help nonprofits to recruit their board members. Who makes a suitable, or who is a suitable board member?
Well, because most not-for-profit boards are volunteer boards, there is a tendency to go, yes, we need help, join us. And especially if someone has a little bit more recognition within the community, and you're going, oh, that's really great for our brand. What I would like to suggest is that I would like to see not-for-profits be a little more intentional about the board members that they bring on, based on the actual purpose of the board. Like, is it fundraising? Is it, advice and direction and strategy? Or is it, perhaps something else, access, getting, introductions to different people? So first of all, based on the actual purpose, I would recommend that NGOs then take a look at, like, where are our weaknesses? Maybe do a bit of a SWOT analysis and see if you can't get board members to fulfill very specific roles, not just treasurer or chairman, things like that, but actual very specific roles, and then recruit them based on their expertise, experience, and context within that category, if that makes sense. So if, operations or marketing or some of those other strategic areas that are just as applicable for a not-for-profit as a for-profit company. So that would be my first advice, is just be a little more strategic. And then with the existing board members, anybody else, some of the volunteers, you can actually set up a bit of what I like to call a war room. So once you've identified the different categories, then you can know that can help us in those categories, and then prioritize them. Obviously, if you have one kind of like what I like to call a linchpin, or someone who is kind of famous and has a good reputation, then you can use that in part of your recruitment. Because it's really, when you approach someone, just like a for-profit business, you need to say, why them, why us, and what the commitment is. Because I think you need to set those expectations out really early. And if those expectations are done in such a way that it's not too onerous, then you're going to find that the right people with the right skill sets are going to want to get involved because they know what those expectations are. So, and as we were talking a little bit before, yes, board members are volunteers, but a lot of NGOs run their events and run, you know, their specific programs with volunteers as well. So that's why I think it's just so important to really, you know, have that purpose, and that's what people buy into. So, you know, that's never going to change. You're going to get your best board members and volunteers through people who actively love what your cause is and how you're doing it. But I don't think that's enough to be as effective as possible. So that's why I would say be a little more strategic, and then bring everybody in and let them kind of get in alignment, be on the same page, and help direct the company to where it needs to go.
So once one has identified why them, meaning why that specific board member of those specific board members, and then why us, meaning why the nonprofit, then coming together and looking at the recruitment process, could you walk us through what a suitable or most effective recruitment process would look like? I've been involved in recruiting a number of board members, and in some cases we've used all sorts of recruitment processes. For some, it was everything, we never met the people, and in some instances, some organizations insisted on inviting the prospective board members into a meeting or getting involved in some activities that they had, whether it was a fundraising event or an annual meeting, just to check and see how they relate with people in the team. So what, in your opinion, what would be a suitable process to follow when recruiting a board member?
Well, again, like I said, they're passionate about the cause. I do think that a personal outreach, I think is a big, you know, ask for people. So you don't want to, you know, only do it electronically or not meet them. I think, you know, first of all, if you can find that 6 degrees of separation, so not only do they love the cause, but then they also love some of the people within the organization that is reaching out and asking them for help. And like I said, you know, so whether it's a volunteer or whether it's a board member, I would recommend like making sure that they sign some sort of a contract. And I know that like volunteers, it sounds like, oh, that's kind of weird, but I would recommend that you say, okay, this commitment is for a minimum of X number of 6 months, and it's 4 hours a month, right? So that you know that right up front. Then when you're actually starting to break it down into the tasks that either the board members or the volunteers are going to be doing, every task, every ask is within that 4-hour range. So, and then I was saying, like, every meeting, it would be great to have a bit of a tracking. So I use kind of a task board approach that I learned in the software development industry called Agile, the Agile Task Board. And so here's what needs to get done. Here's all the tasks associated with getting that done. And then every month someone picks one thing and says, I'm looking after this. So now they have their name on it. And that means, you know, that they're gonna be held accountable. And then the next meeting, you go through like kind of a daily stand up and say, what did you get done? What are you doing next, and what's standing in your way? And so this works really well in 2 different ways. Number one, every time you get something done and you go, done, and you celebrate, and everybody, and you're in front of your peers, right? So they're going to hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. you didn't get it done, then you can start early identifying what perhaps are some of the things that are in the way. So what's standing in my way? And if not, you know, as an event manager or an executive director, you know much earlier on if anybody's dropping the ball, and you can pick that ball up. And I think sometimes that's one of the biggest issues that I see, is that it's hard to delegate. So what I recommend, whether it's in the boardroom setting or it's in your volunteer setting, that, you know, you do that. Here's the purpose. This is how it fits in the big picture. This is context, because purpose is one of the biggest things that motivate people to do things, whether it's your board members or your volunteers. Next is mastery and autonomy. This is from Daniel Pink and his book Drive, about what drives people, what motivates people. So then you kind of tune the team and get everyone to kind of get to know each other really well, because then that forms bonds and people want to work together with, you know, people that they care about. Then you have like one big collaborative meeting and be able to fully articulate what needs to get done, what that definition of done looks like. And now as an, you know, an ED, an event manager, you know, or someone who's running the board, you can now confidently delegate it to the people that need to get that done or who volunteered to get that done. And you become more of a process manager, and you can go back and do what you do best, right? Which is like, you know, coming up with other ideas or working with the fundraisers or, you know, all these other areas that you have to deal with when, you know, you have a not-for-profit. And, you know, so it's fun, and it's got built-in accountability. So I know it's a little more difficult sometimes in a boardroom setting, because you have to have your certain minutes and things like that. But that's really kind of shifting as well. I think, you know, there are more and more people, especially when you're talking about international organizations, where you can visualize or picturize or put everything kind of like on a one-page visual artifact. You're going to get that's going to be something that's going to be easier to share. And that's just kind of the way that things are shifting. And, you know, even now with COVID-19 and everybody meeting online, now you have that digital capture, whether it's recorded or whatever, but those are now taking the place of, you know, minutes, and changing the environment within the boardroom so it becomes less board room.
Yeah.
And a little more interactive, fun, engaging, where people can actually feel like they're contributing. Because that's, again, sometimes, you know, we talked about this, sometimes I think that's one of the hardest things for a board member or for a volunteer, is to feel like they've actually been able to contribute. So, you know, I like to set things up a little bit differently. So it's, you know, when you have your board meetings, you're not just reading your minutes and updating people. You're saying, here's our latest, newest challenge. How might we? Let's get creative. Let's collaborate. Let's solve this problem. And, you know, especially with the COVID-19 and needing to pivot, you know, you were asking about, you know, where does a board member come in? Well, you know, I'm working on this article with you right now. Yeah. About, you know, pivoting and what are the board members' roles. And I mean, really, it's about problem solving. It's about, you know, let's frame this issue, like this emergency, because you're going to have to work relatively quickly. And so let's reframe it. Let's understand it. Let's make sure that we have the right challenge statements, that we're solving the right problem before we spend our limited resources, time and money on something. Let's just make sure we're solving the right problem. And that's when, you know, if you're serving a certain group, you need to go and talk to them and do some research and say, you know, how have your, you know, issues changed?
Yeah. You know,
yeah. Right. And so that it's like solving the right problem, doing the research, getting the data, and then collaboratively working to come up with solutions. And sometimes that might be, oh, well, I know this company over here that can help fund this, or I have access to this. And, you know, we come back to that experience, expertise, contacts. A lot of that stuff now comes into play as well. But yeah, it's just really kind of bringing them together as quickly as possible and letting them know that, you know, their part of their mandate is to help the direction and help this organization be successful. So
Wow.
how do we do this in these new times? So that's kind of what I've been working on, and it's a creative problem solving technique where, you know, you do divergent thinking and come up with lots and lots of ideas, and then based on a certain criteria that's important for that organization, then you do the convergent thinking and come down to pick those 2 or 3 things in our new normal that's going to add the highest value for not just the people that the organization serves, but for the organization itself.
Wonderful. And what I like about what you've said just now is, as you're recruiting board members, it's really important to come up with a contract to let them know how much time will be required of them, come up with terms of reference or scope of work for what is expected of them based on their areas of specialty, and then from there, using, you know, your agile methods, which is not very complicated, and we will break it down, I believe, in one of our master classes where you will be working taking us through it, and you will help us to see how can we, as non-profits, executives, or leaders, be able to break down the work through a work breakdown structure, whatever techniques that you're going to use to help nonprofits really allocate roles and responsibilities to board members who have recently been recruited to take on specific roles. Now, in times of emergencies such as now, you've already gone deeper into that and shared your insights and wisdom on how we can engage board members. I want to take you back to the recruitment process. And we have spoken about this previously, about the danger of recruiting someone who is a consultant in the nonprofit sector as your board member. I know you have reservations towards that. Please share with us.
If there's an opportunity for one of the board members to profit or directly, maybe indirectly, more so for your strategic board than, let's say, you know, an advisory board or different types of boards. But yeah, so they might have a bias. So if you are looking for, you know, a solution that is unbiased, that might not include that person's consulting services, you know, like sometimes I've seen, you know, people recommend, oh, get on the board as an offline marketing strategy so that they can actually sit at the table with other business owners and then get to know them and eventually pitch their business to them. So I'd just be a little careful again about, you know, when you're recruiting, that it's not just someone who says, oh, I've heard this, right? You know, so if you can really, I mean, I like that idea of you know, inviting them to maybe a potential networking event with the existing board members and other potential board members, and maybe, you know, committee heads, right? Because again, it's not just the board members, it's the committees and like your volunteers. You can get some very high level volunteers who can contribute. And I think the biggest thing is like always figuring out how do they maximize their contribution, feel heard, feel like they've accomplished something. And that makes, because that's why they're doing this. They want to help. So you've got to, allow them to help, but also recognize on a more consistent basis, and even allowing them to recognize, oh, look what I got done, and feel really good about it. Because I think the more you feel good about it, the more you want to do, the more you're going to go out there, the more you're going to bring other people in. So yeah, these roles, responsibilities, you know, like the structure, what works for the organization. And I think you can get like even more amazing people helping you out, but give them structure. I'm sure you've heard this thing, structure equals freedom. You know?
Absolutely.
and the only time anybody's disappointed is when they have unfulfilled expectations. So if you can set your expectations out up front, then again, it becomes just a much more positive experience, because within that construct, you know, they feel appreciated, they're getting things done, you know, as opposed to, and I'm sure some of the people will agree, you know, that but it's just like, they just feel that they were in a meeting where nothing was accomplished.
Yeah.
And it was a good time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they weren't actually able to contribute. And this is kind of this idea as well, when you have your board meetings, how much you prepare, how much you have these challenge statements already in advance, so that you can make it a more effective working meeting when you do get them together, and not just kind of a, you know, something
like
that
formal kind of board meeting where people know we're going to meet and greet, say hi, learn about what's new in the organization, but there isn't really a challenge, as you're mentioning. Some board members, you know, feel bored in the board meeting.
That's not using their time and their talent properly. And that's why I'm saying, you know, there really is a shift in meetings in general, in board meetings. You know, some people are, you know, even the minute rules and all that kind of thing, as we were saying, are not going out the window. I mean, there's still some value in it, but, you know, you want to have artifacts that are easy to look at, easy to understand, that, you know, aren't overly long read. Like, you know, another thing from engaging, I would recommend taking a look at something called slide docs. So it's the work of Nancy Duarte, and she helped Steve Jobs with all his presentations. She's kind of the queen of presentation in Silicon Valley. And so when you're on stage, or when you're talking, or when you're presenting, you know, it's usually narrative pictures and not a lot of text. And then you have your documents, which have a lot of text and not a lot of pictures. And it's this idea of bringing the two of them together so that you can scan and understand the points much faster.
Absolutely.
The other cool thing about designing any of your presentations or documentations like that, you now have a whole array of these little slides that whenever you need, you can, what I call, shuffle the deck. So if you're going out and recruiting a new board member and you want a little bit of an intro deck, now you have this whole kind of repertoire, repository, and you say, oh, here's who we serve, here's how we serve them, and this is the results. This is our historical timeline. These are the results. These are 4 things that I think will really inspire that person to get on board. And now you're not rewriting, you know, so again, we're always being asked to do more with less. So how can you do things kind of once and then
use them? Yeah.
Reuse them, you know, because every not-for-profit is underfunded and understaffed, and, you know, but again, going back to what I was saying before, if you can set those expectations, hold them accountable, allow them to hold themselves accountable, and have it much more engaged where they actually have ownership, you're going to get a lot more work done. And again, just kind of to go back to the meeting, there's kind of 3 stages. An immature board meeting is like where you're talking 80% and only listening 20%. So those would be the more old style ones where you're reading your minutes, you're reading your report, you're talking for 80, and then say, you know, how many agree, yay, nay, but you're really not solving any problems. Mm-hmm. Then you have, like, you know, kind of a medium, which is like you're talking 50%, listening 50%. But what I would like to encourage everybody is that when you have your board meeting, you're listening 80% and only talking 20%. That means that you've done these challenge statements, you've given them the reports, they've done everything in advance. And this is also part of setting your expectations. Before every meeting, you'll need to prep. We're going to come in, and then actually when you get in that meeting, here's our 2 new challenge statements. How might let's solve this problem, right? So, and that's where you're going to get the value. And then the board members are also going to win when you shift that perspective, because they're going to get to hear other people's ideas. And yes, you may end up doing business with one of those other board members based on the fact that you're sitting around the same table and you like what they say and you like how they're saying it. But it's much different than allowing someone to come onto your board because they're using it as the next offline marketing strategy to meet other business owners.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So walk us through, how can a nonprofit utilize the expertise that they have right now, whether they are board members or volunteers who are willing to step in and support them? How can they effectively utilize these individuals who have taken their time to come and offer their expertise at no cost to the organization?
I kind of like to, I have like a 5-step process. So the first one is rev it up, because I am a big motorcycle person, so sometimes, but like rev it up. So let's put what's going on in context right now, right? Like, what's the purpose? Where does it fit in the bigger picture? You know, we're not just going to say, oh my goodness, this is like, you know, only for this crisis time, but it's just, you know, that bigger picture context, purpose. Because, you know, we were saying what motivates people is purpose. Yes. Then tune the team. And as I said, you know, like really make sure, whether it's the volunteer team, whether it's the board team, the advisory team, that you tune the team, that you do some fun things so that they actually get to know each other better. Like, you know, we've talked about personal maps, how you create a little mind map on every board member, you know, what their hobbies, where they've been. Like, you know, the more that you can find out about these people and then kind of capture it on this one page, so that whenever you're meeting with them one-on-one or whatever, you just get to know them better and they can get to know each other better. And again, you can put these maps up on the wall, everybody can see everybody else. So it's just a very fast way for people to kind of get to know someone a little bit better. And I think that's foundational in building any kind of team, is having that sense of knowing, caring, trusting, you know, creating that environment. So tune the team, then map it out. We were saying, like, what needs to get done, like, you know, so here's a challenge, and then you have the meeting where you actually come up with the solution, and then you have to execute on the solution. So what are all the things that we need to get done, you know? And the nice thing is that in crisis times, you pull them together and you reprioritize. And this is why I also like this idea of using kind of the agile task board, backlog, all this stuff, because things happen in the world and they change our priorities overnight. And we need to be able to shift quickly to deal with that and not go, oh, but this was our plan. Well, it's not going to work anymore. So how, you know,
we already know that plans that we had a month ago is not working. I mean, look at us at the NGO Whisperer magazine. The articles that we had planned for the whole year is not working because, you know, of COVID-19, and now we are having to address issues that people are facing.
And I think, you know, that's the other great thing that you do at the NGO Whisperer, is that you go out and you talk to people and ask them what's important. And, you know, so there is a bit of research also that needs to get done. What are the trends? What are you seeing? You know, and you might even have certain people go out and be responsible for a certain piece of research. Let's come together, you know, how do, you know, because you turn them into even more short-term problem solvers, reprioritizing priorities, and then making it happen as quickly as possible. So there's kind of like that, map it out. So now we change our plan, which means like we reprioritize. So instead of like the fact that we were thinking of doing this next, we now have to do this. So then we go over to the task board, but you know, that allows you every meeting to change up what you want to bring to the board to deal with. Mm-hmm. So it's very flexible that way. And I think you've got to start thinking that way in these times. And then once you've kind of sorted out, okay, just do it, right? Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, and allow everybody to take their little piece of the puzzle, get it done, come back together, and again, but also celebrate all the little wins along the way. And, I think, that gratitude and celebration is going to be needed more so than ever. And, when people are feeling so helpless, if they feel like they have contributed and they got something done and they've been recognized for it and it's been, very visible to, that they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel accomplished, like I did something. And that's why I kind of like this idea of, the task board and celebrating those successes, because you're gamifying it a little bit. And what you'll find ends up happening is like, oh, that felt so good, I'm going to do more. And then people start taking on more and get it done faster so that they can replicate that feeling. And that's where, in the software world, we call it velocity. Like, you start getting things done even faster because, the team now knows who to go to, how to do it, and that they can be, you just give them autonomy. Get it done any way that you want to get it done, because that's where you're going to see other areas of innovation that you might not have had before, or new ideas, right? So, first of all, getting them together with the challenge in mind, and then allowing the brilliance and the expertise and the experience of the people on your board to work together to solve that problem, because now they actually feel like they're doing something, as opposed to just sitting in a meeting, yay, nay, whatever.
I really like these 5 pointers that you have given us, and I'm just going to go through them again because I was taking notes while you're speaking. So the first one is purpose, finding the purpose of the meeting. Now we are going through this COVID-19. We're calling a board meeting. Have a clear purpose, tuning in the team to ensure that, you understand each and every person's role and what they can contribute when they come together, and then mapping up the challenge, as you said.
And they do what they do best, right? Like they just let them things that light them up, because that's going to motivate them as well.
And then the third one, once you have identified what they do and what they can do at their best, is actually looking at mapping it out and ensure that every challenge actually has a solution to it, and the solution will come from the board members. Then, of course, reprioritizing. If things are changing, be quick at making changes. Of course, in the end, making it happen and celebrating each and every step all the way as you use the Agile task board to move things from what is being done or what do we need to do, all the way to having it done. And if there's something standing up in the way, that is awesome. So I'm so much excited for every nonprofit executive, anyone who's managing volunteers, whether you are program manager in the field, in the office, whether you're managing consultants that you have recently hired. These are useful tools that you can use. And very soon we will be inviting you specifically to a masterclass that will be hosted by Nancy Mayer, and she will be sharing all this in detail. If you ever wonder what the Agile task board looks like, we are going to do a practical example, share it with you with examples from the nonprofit sector. She's mentioned things like gamification. There will be a lot of that. We will use that and do role plays for you to understand how to work effectively with your board members during this time of crisis, and even after we have come out of this crisis. Nancy, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure to have you today.
My pleasure.
Thank
I'm here
so
to
much.
serve, support, empower, uplift, and that's so much the mission of what you do. It's my honor and pleasure to support and contribute. And whatever I can do to help the NGOs out there, thank you for all your hard work, and in these tough times, thank you even more.
Thank you so much. As we come to the end of this episode, ladies and gentlemen, remember we are here for you, to support you. If you need any support with your board members, we are here for you to help you with finding suitable members, board members, supporting you in the recruitment process and also in appraisal to ensure that your board members are effective, and most importantly, to ensure that your board members are contributing to furthering the mission of your organization in a way that is effective. And as you're thinking of gathering your board members together, also there are tools that we have ready for you to support you to move your board member from an immature board members or board meeting kind of to a mature board meeting where board members are contributing up to 80%, and you're sitting back as executives or leaders or program managers and listening to the wisdom and insight that is coming from your board members. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this show. We invite you to subscribe, to like and comment, because it's all about connecting people, raising funds, and impacting lives globally.